So Carla, we have actually touched on a lot of your questions, but I will go ahead and actually formally ask it in case there's anything that we want to keep adding or anybody else wants to add. So can a startup company engage with the FDA early in their development process, and should they? If so, when should they do that and how? And can you tell us about that and touch on how NAMSA can help? So we did touch on a lot of that, but if you want to just kind of go over it.
Yeah, sure. No, maybe I can talk a little bit about exactly how to do that. I mean,
perfect.
Number one, generally speaking, I would highly recommend that, especially for groups that don't have a lot of comfort around the regulatory requirements and things like that. The mechanism to do that is you submit a request for what's called a pre-submission meeting. So you put a package to the FDA that tells them what your device is, what it's intended to do, what the patient population is, where it will be utilized, all those details. They also like to understand the clinical context, so what other therapeutic options are out there available to patients, what does the scope look like. And you also, the most important part is you put your testing plan in there. This is what we intend to do to demonstrate safety and effectiveness of our device. So that will include your bench testing, any animal studies if necessary, and potentially clinical. You can put together your whole plan and you can get their feedback on it. And the absolutely best part about it is that it's free. It actually doesn't cost anything to submit a pre-submission, and you get their feedback back on what they think about your plan. So I think it's an amazing thing that they offer for free. They've been very good, especially certain groups lately, in giving some very thorough advice, which I think is really helpful. I do think that there is an optimal time to do this though, right? So you don't want to submit this package when you've already done all your really expensive testing, like your animal studies or your MRI testing. There's some things that take some time and are costly, right? Because they don't agree how you did it, guess what, you're doing it over. So I think the optimal time to go in is when you know exactly what you want to do. You have to have a very specific indication. You can't say we're thinking about these 5 indications. You have to pick one. You would be very specific. If you have some early proof of concept work that's complete and you can show some results that demonstrate your device can do what you're saying it's going to do, that makes it less theoretical to them. And if you have some early safety work, so maybe you've done an animal study to test out your product to see how it works, and you've gotten some reasonable data out of that, that's also good to submit. So I highly recommend it. Like I said, generally speaking, and I think there is an optimal time. It takes 75 days to schedule that meeting, so that's not an insignificant amount of time. So you want to, boil that into your project planning and pick your timing and plan, appropriately, but it can be of enormous value. So.
Okay, and then if the meeting doesn't go well, will they do it again for free? Will they, if you tweak? Okay, good.
You can submit as many pre-submissions as you want, I think.
On the same idea?
On the same idea, yeah, you can keep talking about it.
That's great.
Yeah.
You know that they're open to that communication.
Yeah, they encourage, well, they ask you to come early and often. There is a flip side to this, like, you don't always want to give them everything necessarily. The more you give, the more that they sort of ask for. So there is some strategy about.
They never forget what you shared with them.
They never forget what you shared with them. So, if you're concerned that they could potentially push you in a direction that you don't want to go, I would definitely recommend having help putting together a package that will put you in the direction that you want to go, because there's lots of gray in the regulatory world. There's lots of opportunity for interpretation, and the way that you position your device and your information can be important.
Good. All right. Thank you.
I just add to that, if I could, Jessica, the FDA is not quite the mysterious organization that it was 20 years ago, 30 years ago. I mean, their standards for processing applications has changed significantly. And I say even in the last 5 years, and that. As Carla said, this is it's a 75-day window on a pre-submission to when you're going to talk. You can see that on the website. You know that that's your time frame. Build that into your plan. When you submit an application, they are required by law to respond in 90 days, right? Oh, is that right? So you can build.
75 now.
Is it 75?
Yeah.
Okay. So even from 3 years ago when we submitted ours, it shortened down to 75 days. Now, and you should build in your plan. They probably won't respond until 74.
Right.
And just before midnight, but that's because they're going through a lot of information. in order to be able to come back to you with a bunch of questions. And then the clock starts again when you respond to the questions, et cetera. So it's not like it's this amorphous thing you have to deal with. And I think one thing that's really important, if you're trying to raise capital at the same time you're going through these processes, you need to understand that and show that in your use of funds and your timeline, because nothing turns an investor off quicker than you saying, I don't know when the FDA is going to clear this, I have no idea. You know,
Right,
so
right.
You can build that in and say,
Yeah.
it should be cleared at this point.
Yeah, or not be realistic about the costs.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, good, thank you.